everyone. Hi, Christine. You sewing along? Oh, you sewing along today, Christine? There's a link out on the Miss Loreens Schoolhouse Facebook page for this template to download. I'll add it to the description on today's video later on, so you'll have it. So these two I did here. Got my bigger scissors are in there. This is just pre-quilted fabric I got at Joann's. There we go. Just the camera. I just want to double check and make sure all the camera settings, because I moved one camera, banging into it. We're looking all right there. Let's back up a little bit. Looking pretty good. Let's see if I can focus that way. No, that's a bad focus, isn't it? There we go. Okay, so we'll wait. And oh, not today, Christine. You're just hanging out and watching, having a snack. See, I forget what I was going to say. Oh, so I think I was saying about the quilted fabric. So this is just quilted fabric. It's fabric on both sides. And it's kind of that puffy. See if I've got some. I've got plenty. But see, it's that, what is that, like polyfill or whatever it is? The fluffy, see, it's the fluffy stuff. And I think at Joann's, I think they probably have the best selection. You might try one of your local quilt stores, see if they have any. But I think Joann's probably has the best. But if you're going to use it, make sure you get the one that's double-sided. Doesn't matter if they're the same color on both sides, but you don't want one side that's that's sort of this kind of stuff. And it doesn't take much, so what did I say, 11 inches? So that would be 1/3 of a yard. And you'd certainly get a few of them, because this is, how tall is this? 8 inches, and I can't remember if this might even be 60 inches long, so you'd certainly get quite a few of them out of that. And you could, before you make it, you could embroider on here, embroider a name, or embroider, you know, my scissors, or whatever special pair of scissors. Like if you have your pinking shears, you could embroider pinking shears on there, whatever makes you happy. And they just tuck in and close up. Oh, there we go. I'm going to leave these out. So I'm going to set this up here for now. And that's just to remind me to give you the cutting instructions for later on. So let's see. Oh, so it's 1:30. We're about to start. So this was pre-quilted fabric that I used. So let me do one last pause just for a second, because then I can cut all this beginning of this video off. So I'm just going to go back to the music for 1 minute. There we go. So good afternoon, everyone. We're making a little, I call it my scissor keep, as I got tired of my scissors banging into each other. So now I can just fold them in. They're put away. They're not going to come out any end. I can pile them up in a drawer, whatever. So I just hate them banging into each other. And again, I'm going to probably use that pair of scissors. So the template that I used, it's kind of an odd shape. But the template I used, I will put a link below in this below in this video in the description. Otherwise, if you go to Miss Loreens Schoolhouse Facebook for yesterday, which is February 12th, there's a link there taking you to the free download. So it's odd shaped, and I'm going to face it towards you. And the reason is because when this folds up, I want this to match, and then we just have a little bit down here, and then this part folds over. So if I fold this up, it now is the same as this one. So this part here is the flap that's right there. Even though this is rounded, I did not cut my binding on the bias. So we'll work with it just straight, because you know sometimes bias takes up a lot of unnecessary fabric. Okay, so I quilted a new piece, and when I cut it out, I wanted to be flipped over to the back because this is going to flip up this way. So I wanted to be able to see how it was going to look. So it's going to flip up this coming up, and then this will flip down. So I see I was trying to get the turtle in the flip down. Okay. So if you're trying to figure out how you want your fabric, make sure it's face down, and then before you cut it, just flip up and see, you know, where you want to place your template, because you have room enough on that 11 by 11 square to be able to either go in this direction, you know, any of the directions of cutting to get what you want. Just remember to have it face down, so that, because the flipping up in this, if that's the side that's important to you, otherwise it's this side. So, you know, your first one you might want to make just plain, because then you don't have to worry about it. And I made a note on here, and you can make a note on yours, and it says binding first, because you want to remember this straight edge is going to have binding on it first. And I also put on here, this is for 6.5 inch scissors. Okay. Oh, hi, Rhonda. Rhonda's here, and so is Nancy. Hi, Sewing Nancy. Hi, Persis. Oh, my voice kind of went up. I had like a young boy's voice change right there for a minute. I know. I'm clearing my throat again. I swear I drank a gallon of water. Okay, so if you want the bigger one, because this fits on the whole page of printer paper, and to me it's easier. I laid this down and I just went 1 inch all the way around bigger to get this one, and these are 9-inch scissors. So I worked from the same template. So if you have a what is it, Duso or red dot paper that they use for pattern making, so you have your first one and then pencil out the next one and cut that, because unless you have a printer that what is it, 12 by 17 I think it is, to me that's easier than trying to tape and piece a couple of pieces together. Hey Lynn, hi Cammie. Okay, so remember 9-inch scissors, 1 inch bigger the whole way around. Okay, and then mark it. And if you want to go smaller, so if you have a, I don't know, I know this is a little small, you've been doing this, but if you take your original template and then you just figure out what you need, and you would cut that part off, make sure you have a little room at each end, about 1/2 inch at least on each end for where your binding comes across, okay? And your flap, if you make it smaller, you'll need less flap because you don't want a flap that goes too far. So you can really make whatever size you want. I'm making my turtle one to go with my little, I made a little turtle basket. We did a basket last Saturday. I believe the size of this one cut was 10 by 18. Straps were the same. So I got my little crochet pot holder in there. And I'm gonna have my little scissor keep to go with it. Okay, so I used regular, what is it called? Warm and Natural. And I just did quilting like little waves. See it? Little, can you see the little, there you go. Little waves. Don't have to get all fancy. Okay, so we're ready to start. Because this is going to be fairly simple. I talked long enough. I hope that you had time to cut your pattern out if you haven't already. Then we need 2 pieces of 2 strips, 2 1/4. I know I usually do 2 1/2, but this is 2 1/4 by what did I do? 10 1/2. And if you're making your own size, you just want enough hanging off each end. I do that because I know I'm going to trim it, because sometimes when I start here, and I think I started here, but my foot kind of pushed this ahead, and then I don't have anything on the end. So I always overhang, and I overhang by 1/2 inch, 1 inch, whatever makes you happy is fine. And this piece is going to be going around here. It's a little hard to measure, so I think for the big one, I cut a square 12 by 12, and my binding, the bottom binding for the 9-inch one, the first one was 12 inches, but that's easy for you to figure out. The one coming around was 22, which I'm trying to work from fat quarters, so because I figure most everyone that sews, quilts, that kind of stuff, you've bought a fat quarter bundle, or you've gone here or there and picked up a fat quarter from different places that you either travel to or visit. So most of the things I'm trying to do from fat quarters. This could be just scraps. Okay? So the first thing we have to do is we've got to press this. So I'm going to set that aside. Get my little pressing mat. And we're just going to press this in half. I guess I should turn my mat so it's long enough. I'm always, on the corner of my eye, I see my sewing machine, because I don't generally iron this close to my sewing machine. So we'll just do this one for now, one step at a time. Let me see. So in this case, when I flip this over, this side of the binding is going to show, and the other side's going to be on the inside. So I normally hand stitch my binding closed, when I flip it over. But for this project, we can live on the edge and stitch. But if I put my binding on this side first, when I flip it over, I know that's going to be nice and neat. Where on the other side, I'll show you. No telling what I'll end up with, because I tried to do the stitch in the ditch, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I don't know if any of you have tried that. But like I said, I normally finish mine by hand, so I'm not as proficient at stitching it on the machine, but we're going to give it a go. Or I'll give it a go and you watch, and then you can decide. Oh, Christine, you're so funny. So Rhonda was saying she likes the small bucket, and Christine said, no, it's not a bucket, it's a busket. That wasn't an error in my speech. So it's a cross between a bucket and a basket, so I call it a busket. See if my busket word ever gets into the dictionary. So I'm going to pin this on. We're on that straight side. Fold is towards the fabric. Raw edges. Both the raw edges are at the raw edge here. And we're going to do a 1/4 inch seam. And we can start a little off of this edge if we're worried we're not quite at the edge because it's underneath. And we'll be fine. So let me switch over so we can go sew. As soon as I find the mouse for there we go. There we are. I'm just using my J foot, which is my regular sewing foot, the one with a little black knob over here. And I have it on my regular sewing stitch, which is 1-03 if you're on a Baby Lock or Brother. So it's just a straight stitch in the middle. And I set my camera right in front of where I put my foot down. That's not helpful. And I'm lining up so that I'm not at the edge of my foot. I'm a little to the left. And I'm sewing one-handed because I'm standing on one foot and pedaling with the other. Nope. Trying to keep my hands out of your way. Oh, my basket's in the way. I set my basket down back there. I want you to get in the habit of not pulling this when you're stitching, because it will move. It'll stretch, and then you'll have waviness. So just lie it down flat. Okay, back to the work table. Okay, we're pressing today, Rhonda. Pressing. So I just want to press this over. Just so I don't have any ridge along here. I am using matching thread so that if I'm not perfect, it'll be okay. So I've turned it over. Let me see if I can. Let's do it this way. I can sit this way on the side. And what we're doing is we're turning this over. And we want it to be, because I've got matching thread. Okay, you see my sewing line? That's where I sewed this, the binding to the keep or holder. And I want to just cover that, because if I just cover that, and then I come over to this side and I stitch in the ditch, which means I'm going to stitch right where this seam is, it should catch this back. Should. So I want to fold this over. Now, if you took too big a seam, let's see if I'll try to, and of course it's matching, it doesn't help you any. But if I took too big a seam and it doesn't come over enough, just fold it back. Move your mat, put your ruler down and trim a little off so that when you flip this over, you want it to nicely just cover those stitches. So I'm going to get my marking pen. And I'm going to mark where those stitches are. Can you see that line? I'll make it a little longer. Okay. So you see the line right there? So I want to come over so that my fold is just over that line, that's where those stitches are. Because the whole point, besides covering this edge, is to cover that stitching. Okay? So let me get some pins. Now I'm going to be sewing from this side. So when I put my pin, I said pin and I grabbed the clip. Oh, there we go. When I put my clips on, I want the flat side down because it's a real pain in the neck. I start in the middle. I want to be just over. And I'm clipping so that clear side is up. When I turn over, the clip is nice and flat instead of being rounded and just causing me issues. Then I'm going to come over and make sure you give it a little tug because you don't want a space up here of nothing but binding because eventually it'll flatten out. And what I do is I'll hold it here and I'll just give it a tug. See how I'm tugging that way? Theoretically, this should work. And see how I have extra, and that's what I want because inevitably, if you do it just exactly the length of this, you'll end up short. You just have to trust me on that one. And I can go ahead and put a clip here because I can start a little out. I'm just going to move this guy. I'll move this guy down a little. I just scoot everybody down because we don't want to get carried away. It is a little harder to pin because you've got a lot of layers to go through. So see, and there's my little mark. Oh, hold on. Oh, see if I do it this way, there it is. See that little line? I'm just past that line. Okay? So let's go. So, and this is a good place for matching thread so it can hide all your little mistakes. So let's go sew. Okay, so my clip is too close, so I've got to take it out of the way. But I want to make sure that I'm starting right at I'm going to be right at the very edge. And remember, there's going to be binding coming around here. So if you're not at the very, very edge, it's okay. I'm going to go ahead and do a locking stitch. And my needle is landing right next to this binding. Right next to it. I don't know if I can get in. Let me see if I can get in a little closer here. So right where my finger is, let me see if, what can I point with? Right? It's running right along this edge. I'm going to try to stay off my binding, but I want to be very close. If you have a stitch in the ditch foot, that the guide of the stitch in the ditch foot would go right along that edge. I should have got it out, but I know a lot of people don't have one. Now, what I want to make sure of, let me take just a couple stitches. And I want to make sure that nothing, when I took that clip off, that nothing, my binding didn't sneak out where it wasn't supposed to be. So let's give it a whirl. On the J foot of the brother and baby lot, there's a little line, like a little indent line right at the center. Here's the plastic part here. Then there's a metal piece going across. On that metal piece going across, there's a little indented line. That's what you want to follow because that's where your needle is going to come down. just take your time. So if I twirl this around and look back, okay, see how I didn't catch this whole part? I thought I was off. But we can fix that after. But see, but I caught it up here. So let's hopefully I got it the rest of the way. But I'll show you how to fix that. So what I should have, I have to take my glasses off to see in the camera here. I should have, let me back up a little bit. My line of stitching is right along that edge. I'm not sure if you can see it, if there's too much glare. But see how I missed right here, and I missed this whole section. So rather than working from the end on this side, I'm gonna go this way, because I find when I start sometimes I lose that little edge. So I'm gonna pin it again. We'll clip it again, and I have this little area right here. Now, would it matter? Not really. It's underneath. It's not going to show. It's a folded edge. It's done, but we'll fix it. And what I did is I just pulled it more towards the fabric so that I catch it. So I guess I'm going to sew opposite of what you normally would. So normally you don't have fabric out here. It's over on the left. But the only point I have to make is I need to stitch right next to this edge, right where the seam would be. So I'm going to reach over and use my wheel to bring that needle down so I know it's in the right place. And I need to do a locking stitch here because I'm starting in the middle. There isn't anything that's going to be holding that. Here's my first problem. So you see how I started back further. Okay, sorry, I was talking into the other camera. Okay, so I've locked my stitch, and I can still follow that same guide on my foot. Okay, I want to be very careful to hold this down when I slide that clip off, and make sure you open that clip up. You're not just pulling it off and dragging. And rather than stop and start, I'm just going to keep going because I'm coming up to my other area that wasn't stitched. I'm getting close to my clip, so I'm really going to hold my finger down and I'm going to squeeze this open, because we have the tendency to just pull those clips off without really wholeheartedly opening them. Okay, so let's go to the work table and see how it came out. Now, I'm gonna clip this thread off. That's the thread where I started. Now, theoretically, because I'm stitching in the ditch, if I stitch over this area twice, I should still be fine. So it doesn't look like any extra stitching went on. Now when I turn it over, let's see. I have to get my own head out of my way. Can you see? There we go, right there. See the stitching? Follow along my thumb right there. Do you see the stitching? Well, that wasn't so bad, was it? We got one part done. Let's see if I want to just check, make sure nobody has any questions and nobody needs to see that part of it. So I'm just going to now have my scissors lined up with the edge of my fabric and just go straight, clip that off. Now, I flipped it over because I don't want to go this way because I could come in at an angle. So I'm going to flip it over because I want to run along the edge of my fabric. So how's that? Has everybody got that far? Okay, we're almost done. So we're going to turn our holder, keep, right side is down because we want to fold up, and you'll know you're folded right if you run along here. Now, it might be like that. That could happen. But what I want to do at this point is I'm going to just try and go, okay, how's my scissors doing? Because if I need to make it deeper, I just don't want to make it too deep that I don't have anything left to snap. And also make sure I got plenty of room here. See, my scissors are here. And actually my scissors end way over here. So I've got room in there. And they don't need to be in there tight because this is going to be seamed. Seam here, fold it over. They can move back and forth in there. So don't think you have to make it like a glove. It's not a scissor glove. Could have called it that though. So you should have that pretty well matching. Now let's see. If I had it this way, the wrong side, and I fold it up, you see how I'm off? Not that you couldn't trim it and fix it. So you could, as long as your scissors fit in there. So say that happened. And I decided, okay, I like this side better. Now I've got plenty of room here. I've got plenty of room here. I got flap enough. Let me come back just a little bit. I've got flap enough here. I could cut this just so these two pieces of fabric match each other. Okay, and you want to try to keep the curve. Does that make sense? Hopefully. Hi, Cindy. I don't think I said hi to you before. I mean today, not before. But what you really want to do is have your right side facing down. And these will match. And that's why the pattern looks kind of odd. If you need more room up here than you thought, like for example, your pinking shears are a little thicker all the way to the end. If you need a little more room, move this up. So say your scissors fit in here fine, but you needed that more room, but they're still good. They fit in here fine. You're just going to trim so they both match and trim so this is off the edge. Does that make sense? I don't want to, have you have, only one size or one way of doing it. Okay. So again, I'm just going to put my scissor in, plenty of room. I can even, and make sure I had the tendency not to scoop my scissors down to this fold. So I got plenty of room there. So you can see the outline of my scissors are right there. And the important part is having enough fold that we can snap it. Okay, it doesn't necessarily have to cover the very edges because this edge is going to be sewn shut. This edge is sewn shut. So if you had a little opening there or a little opening here, that's okay. Hey Rose, we haven't seen you in a while. How have you been? Oh yeah, excellent gifts. Rose is saying it's excellent gifts for your sewing friends. Oh, let me write in my address. Just kidding. Okay, so I want you to be able to, like most of the projects we do, I want you to be able to change it a bit to fit whatever scissors or whatever you want to put in here. Which I can't think of. Oh, man, pizza cutter could probably go in there. There you go, pizza cutter. But so I want you, the reason I want to keep repeating this because I want you to be comfortable in making it work for the scissors that you have. Okay? Rose, if you missed the beginning, I did a little part about making a bigger one, just so you'll know. Okay, so once we have this where we feel it's comfortable, okay, I'm going to put a pin. I moved my. Well, you know what? Wait a minute. Let me put my scissor in again because I'll show you with mine. I'll make it off a little bit. Okay, I still have room enough there for my snap. Okay, so I'm going to take my scissor out. I'm going to pin here away from everything. I'm going to come down and I'm going to pin over in this area here. Okay? Now I'm going to flip this over. See how I got a little bit too much there? Now it could be that I'm off kilter a little bit, so I would take it back and adjust. But if it came out to be like that, I'm just going to take my scissors and I'm just going to cut that overage so that everybody's lined up. So I got rid of this little piece. So that way, when you quilt and you cut and you trace and everything's not perfect, we can make it perfect. Now I'm going to go down to this end because I'm going to be sewing along here to close this end up. So I don't need all that. So I just got rid of that little bit. Okay, I left my pins in when I cut because I don't want to cut and then I move it around and then I cut again, I move it around and then I end up with a, something that just fits my snips in. So pins a little ways away, make your cut. If you want to do it with your rotary cutter, go ahead, do it slow. Same thing here, pin is over here out of the way. Just make sure that everybody matches up. All right? So now we're going to stitch this closed. So I'm going to stitch down and turn around and stitch back. And then I'm going to come to this side and, let's see, well, I'll be coming from this way. Stitch down and then stitch back. I like to have an extra stitching there because that is where the point of your scissors will be poking. And when you tend to put your scissors in, you kind of, putting them in this way. So these two little seams will have stress. It's going to be a lot of stress, but why not take care of it while we're right there? Okay, so we're going to stitch about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge because we don't want this to show. We're going to be putting binding on, the same as we did here. So we want to make sure the stitching for the seam we're doing now is inside of that 1/4 inch. So we're going to be doing about 1/8 of an inch. Okay? So let's go sew. And I'm going to stop and get a little drink on my way to sewing. Trying to drink so you don't hear it. If I'm concerned that I have a lot of bulk here, I'm going to come in I got to line myself up better. I'm going to come in and I'm going to start here. And then you'll watch what I do. And I do this a lot because it's like driving. Going down the highway going forward is great. Going down the highway going backwards, not so much. So why drive your machine where you can't see, especially because this is a curve, or why fight with this edge if your machine doesn't like those heavy, bulky edges? So I'm going to start, I don't know, maybe I'll go in an inch, take a couple of stitches, and I'm going to turn around, go back, and then go. let's make life easy for ourselves, shall we? Oh, and I banged the camera, sorry. Trying to reach the, there we go. And I went to the edge without thinking about it. So remember, this is a curve. Now you see I'm using the J foot, and you see how it's clear in the middle. See that my fabric is not over to the metal part, it's at the edge of the clear. That's going to give me my 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm just going to go ahead a few stitches, you know, because I call this is my third hand when the needle goes down. I'm just going to turn it around so that, now I got to use my left hand here because I don't have any fabric over here. And I'm just going to stitch to the end. And this time, I'm following my fabric on the left side of where this metal part of the foot comes out, the toe, and the clear is here. Same exact things, just on the opposite side. Take your time because you're curving around. Get to the end. Turn back around. And now we can head out along our way. And remember, we want an 1/8 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm way on the inside. Let me see if I can show you that. I can see the edge of my fabric through the clear part of my foot. Don't go too close to the edge because all you'll do is ravel your fabric. Or shred it, I guess. I'm going to come up to my end, and I can go right past where this binding is, because this is also going to have binding on it. So I can be past it, so I don't have to worry about, did I stop right on it? Did I stop too close? Was I too far away? I'm just going to spin around, and I'm going to get my pin out of my way. And I'm just going to stitch back in the exact same place down to the end again. See, you sew with me. It doesn't matter if you're left-handed or right-handed. We're sewing on whatever side we need to. I'm going to come down to that end. And you know I can't stand having the threads out at the very end. So I want you to have the same things that irritate me are going to irritate you. And I'm just going to come in a little ways and lock the stitch. Okay, so let's see if you can see. Let me try to. You can kind of see it. Oh, there we go. See it right there. Okay? Now we're going to do the other end. And this time, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start down here, stitch a little bit, go back, and then stitch again. So I'm just on the very edge of where the binding and the fabric meet. And remember, 1/8 of an inch. Okay, I've done a few stitches, gives me my third hand. Normally I'd swing around to the front, but if I do, I'll knock the camera down. And then I'm going to go ahead and stitch. And then I'm going to swing around and stitch back. And then I'm going to just swing in because I can't stand those stitches, threads hanging on the end. And then go ahead and lock my thread. And I can go ahead and take that pin out. So back to the work table. Taking that pin out. So there we have it. I've stitched there. Let's give it a second to see if it'll not be fuzzy. I stitched right there, and I've stitched right there. Now I've got the batting, because I've squished it down so close to the edge. Looks like the batting's puffing out, but that's okay. We're going to have binding. So now, let me get this out of the way. I have to clean up some of my mess here. Now I need to press this binding. And this one, I believe, is about 20 inches. So the long edge of your fat quarter, if you're using one. Folding it in half. Matching my raw edges. Also make sure the end matches so you're not crooked. And I made this longer than we need because we need to fold those ends in because the ends are going to be exposed. And you'll see what I mean in a minute. Did everybody go to the Miss Loreens Schoolhouse Facebook page and see where the some of the students, I'll call you the students, made some baskets? There was a watermelon one. That was the one I remembered the most. There's pictures of them from a week ago Friday. And the week ago Friday, and whenever the last basket post was. Okay? Now, we're going to be starting here, and we're going to be going around and ending over here. So when we start our binding at this side, if I just had that raw edge, we'd have a raw edge there. So I've got to start, so I have a little hanging off. And I'd say half inch, maybe a little more, 3/4. My fold is on facing the fabric. My raw edges line up with these raw edges. And I'm going to use some pins this time, I think. And I will say, I find that pinning this the whole way is kind of throws me off. But I'm going to pin because I want to make sure I have enough. Otherwise, I wouldn't pin it. Now, what you have to be really careful of, you see how this is, there's extra here, see? Don't worry about that. Don't stretch this part up here to make this fold side flat. Your only concern is going along this edge. Don't stretch it. I just take my thumb and I go along. And let me do a little more because you'll see that the folded edge will get kind of ripply. You're gonna want to stretch it, and you just have to fight that urge. So I'm just running my thumb along. I'm not stretching it at all. And let me just go this far for now. Okay, you see that? Don't try to flatten that out. We need that because when we flip this binding over to the other side, if we stretched it, there wouldn't be enough to get over to the other side and lay flat because you've stretched it. Okay. It's hard to say. It's hard to explain it. It's easy when you see it. Because what's going to happen is this is naturally going to want to flip over to the other side, and you'll be so happy about that. So we want to keep going. And again, don't pull on this. I'm just guiding along. Don't put 4,000 pins in. I just want to keep my eye on my raw edges being lined up with each other. Okay, so you had plenty. So if you want to have more at this end, because we got to fold this up. So I'm going to make more at that end. And yes, I know everyone moans when they have to do something over, but it's no big deal. I'm going to give myself more than I need. Remember, don't pin at the edge, because the second you go to sew it, you got to take that pin out. I'm just going along. So see how I got that wave? Don't look at it. Put your horse blinkers on. I'm just holding my fabric, pressing it down with my thumb. Go a couple inches anyway. You'll do this after a while with no pins. I know you're all going, oh, no pins. Okay? Try to remember, no stretch, no stretch. Ripple is good. Ripple. Wasn't that a old 99-cent wine back in the 70s? Oh, I guess that's telling too much, isn't it? Boone's Farm and Ripple. I'm just going along. Let's see if I can turn there. So all I did is I pushed that ripple out of my, it's under my thumb there somewhere. Now, I'm not going to cut this off now because I don't need to. Don't cut something off before it's necessary. Okay? Okay? So there, oh, look, I forgot to use that pin. So there we are. How's that look? I bet Lynn likes these pins. Lynn, you liking all the pins? No, you'd have more. Okay, but so see all my waves? It's perfectly fine. My only thinking now is as I'm sewing along, taking my time, 1/4 inch seam allowance, I only care about what's under my needle. So about this far in from the edge needs to be flat. I don't care out here what's going on. And it's very hard to concentrate at first when you're first doing it, to keep your eye over where the needle is. Nothing else matters. It's going to be pretty easy here, but when you start getting to this side, you see this big lump. Well, when the foot comes by, you're going to make it flat. Okay? You ready? Everybody got their seat belts on? Oh, Rose, thanks. Boone's Farm, you remember that. It was apple, wasn't it? Apple flavored. I'm not a wine drinker, so I think it was like the first apple flavored, like it was like a sin against grapes, if I remember correctly. Okay, so let's sew. And let's see if I can. I'm going to try to come in a little more with the camera, so beg your forgiveness for the moment. Let me get the focus moved. Is it focusing better now? No, that doesn't look good. I got to find a spot where it wants to focus. How's that? That's pretty good. All right, so I want my 1/4 inch. And I've got to feel where the edge is. So what I'm going to do is I can feel the end there, and I'm going to start stitching on my binding, but away from my edge. On the binding, but a little before you feel that little lump. So whatever you need to do your 1/4 inch, I'm moving my, no, that doesn't work. I'm moving my focus thing around, so trying to find, I think that's the best spot right there. How's that? Does that look good? If you have a little Boone's Farm, it'll look just fine. I don't need to do a locking stitch out here. So we're going to concentrate on just the area close to the needle. So I'm coming up on my first pin. I'm holding my fabric. I'm going to pull that pin out. And you'll notice when you take the pin out, your fabric might even relax a little bit more. I don't know how my 1/4 inch will be because I'm trying to watch the camera and hold the fabric and see, make sure you can see everything. It just wants to, I'm trying to put the focus in a place that doesn't unfocus when I sew. Okay, I think that's, it was fine before. I don't know, it's just being a brat. I think that'll be good enough, hopefully. Hopefully for you. Hope no one complains. Now you may find that you're going to have to take some pins out because it really depends on your pinning as you went along. So see, I don't care what's happening out here. I only want to make sure, and that's not a wrinkle, that's actually going over that bump. I only care about what's going on around my needle. Holding my fabric, taking the pin out. If I find I've got too much fabric here, it may be because I need to take the pin out and let that relax a little bit. That's why I find it's easier not to pin. And I'm holding this down. I can see right now that I've got this nice flat area. Let me back this up. Maybe it'll, oh, wrong way. Sorry, hold on. Almost tipped the whole thing over. I'm just trying to find a spot that isn't so out of focus. Okay, hopefully that'll, it may be a little bit, but hopefully that'll work. And again, I just want to make sure that what's by the needle is nice and flat. Just don't try to stretch your fabric. Try to not let yourself do that. And I'm going to take out the rest of the pins because I can do it better this way if I just lie it flat for the section I need. When you have more curve, you're going to stop more often. Just again, don't just fight that urge to pull the strip of the binding fabric. And I'm going to stitch off right onto my binding, just my binding. And I'm going to flip to the video, but I'm going to see if I can get that. I don't know why the camera doesn't seem to want to. I don't know what its problem is. Oh. Helps when you hit the right button, doesn't it? So see how we have all that ridgy stuff? That's okay. I'm going to get rid of some of this but I'm not certain of the angle, so I'm just going to cut down here a little ways, and you'll see what I mean in a minute. But now watch this. When I push this up, it goes right around to the other side. Check that out. Just give it a little tug, and look, it automatically wants to go around to the other side. Now you want to make sure that this lays flat. If I had tugged on the fabric too much, I might not get this to lay flat because it wants to pull in. Okay? And we're going to do the same thing we did before. We're just covering the stitching. So if you have too much stitching here, pull your binding back, get your scissors and give it a little, and just trim a little at a time, okay? But when I'm pulling this straight up, and see how it'll look just fine. I just want to make sure, mine's a little tight, and that's probably because I pinned, because I'm a little short on seam here, so I could go back. You see, I have a real short seam here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back, and I'm going to come in a little ways with my seam because I'm practically in that 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So I can fix that while I'm right here. Might as well fix it. So I'm going to go back and start sewing where it's right, and then I'm going to continue on down to get my 1/4 inch seam allowance. So let's go back and sew. And I've got to get this camera on the right angle that it likes. And I don't know if I've hit a button while I'm playing here. There we go. So I'm just going to go back to where I know it's correct. I'm going to make sure I lock the stitch. And I'm going to sew a little bit bigger seam. And I know my binding's on the other side, but it should be fine because I've already sewed it down. And the reason I went back and sewed it, let's come back to the work table, is because I knew when I turned this over, I wouldn't have enough of the seam allowance to fill up my binding. And when you do it, you'll know what I'm saying. So I'm going to just fold that down. And I can't remember, did we clip last time? I think we did. I just want to, again, let me get rid of this. I just want to make sure I'm past. I'm not going to iron this one because this is a little harder to iron, like we ironed here. This is a little harder to iron because it naturally wants to go to the back. But I want to make sure that I don't pull my whole seam allowance down. And if you made this a little tight, mine's a little tight. If you make it a little tight, it wants to fold in more, but that's okay. You just put your finger there and just bring your binding down so that, again, it just covers that stitching you just did. I think you'll find if you just give it a little push away from you, you'll be okay. And I'm just going to clip to here because I got to address this issue. And I'm checking. Oh, I got to get rid of some of these. If you don't get rid of these little ravelly threads, they'll pop out and be harder to get rid of. I want to, again, keep my eye on that binding just covering the stitching. And I'm going to stop there. And remember, tug it out. Okay, you good so far? So this should be sitting nice and flat. And if you have any place, I have one area that looks like my binding is wider. That means I just pulled it down over too far. Okay, so when we look on this side, we want this binding to be the same width the whole way. Okay, so now we're at the end, and we need to fold this in and then turn the binding over it. So first thing I'm going to do is trim out some of that threads because they just come out. I know now I need to, let me see if you can see it this way. I need to fold this section in because that's that seam allowance. Okay? I've got way more than I need to fold up. So I'm going to get my scissors. And let's see. So I've got about 3/4 of an inch there. I try not to cut it too short because it's harder to work with. So this is the first piece right here. We zoom in just a little bit. There we go. So see how this is folded over right here? That's that seam allowance. So I want to fold that over. It's part of the seam allowance. Then I want to bring this, let's get rid of, I got more threads than I know what to do with here. Okay. So I folded that in. I'm going to fold this. I'm going to fold it in. But I want to make sure that when I close this, that I don't have, let me see if I can make it, I have to hold it this way a second. So when I fold this over, I don't want to have, see how that's hanging out? I don't want to have that hanging out. So if I give this a little bit of a fold in, oops, sorry, fold it over, oops, and I just want to tuck, so let me get I got this part done first. Now it's this little guy right here. I'm gonna see if I can tuck him in. So see how I've tucked him in? This part that's right next to my finger. So that when I fold this over, oops, sorry, I gotta do it from my own angle here. And that's why I hand do this part. So what I want to end up with is, and it's harder to do when you're trying to do it in the camera. So let me move this down. What I want to end up with is this nice folded area with none of the fabric from underneath showing through. Okay. Now, I've got some hanging off there, so I need to fix that. So I've got that folded. I want to pull that extra fabric up so it's nice and even there. And let me fold that one down, but I need to tuck in. I'm sorry, I'm trying to do it so you can see it, and now you know why I do mine by hand here. It'd be easier. There we go. Oh. So I want this fold kind of needs to go at an angle coming down, because it needs to line up with, there we go. It needs to line up with that edge. So let's see if I can, I'm not sure if I can get a needle, a pin through that or not. No, it's too heavy, but I am gonna see if I can come in here and pin out that way, because I really need to catch that edge. So that looks fine. Now, if I wanted, I can, if you want to make it go straight out, let's see if I can do that for you. So if I fold this up, make a little crease there. You know what, let's take I'm going to take a little more fabric off because I feel like I'm fighting with this. And I've come in at a little more of an angle. I'm concerned if you cut off too much. I'm sorry, I have to do it facing me. If you cut off too much, I don't want you to have nothing to fold in. And I'm going to fold this over. If I fold this over and get this correctly, then I can worry about tucking that little piece in. So I want to look and make sure, okay, this looks nice here. So now I just got to make the back match. And that just means I need to, there we go. There we go, watch. Let's see if I can let go of it enough. Can you see how I came in at an angle? So I'm holding on here because I got that just right. And I'm going to push this fabric so it's flat. And it doesn't reach up. Can you see the end is right there? But the edge of the binding on the front is up further. There we go. Okay, if you want to, I don't have a sewing needle right here, but if you want to, go ahead and do a little hand stitch there to hold it, or steam seam to hold it, because I didn't have this much. I didn't argue with this fabric as much as now as I mean the other day as I am now. But now we've got that nice and straight. Do I care about that little angle? No. I'm happy. I'm just happy that the whole thing is straight. And I'm just going to put a clip. I'm going to go this way. Oh, sorry, had it up too far. So see? Let's see if we can struggle. And the other side also looks fine. Let's see if I can struggle less this time. So I have a ton of fabric more than I need. So if I fold this over, and then I fold it back just to see where I need to be, and then I can cut some of that off. And I'm going to open it back up, fold it in, fold that piece down. There, I didn't struggle that time. And if you need to maneuver it, use your pen or your stiletto and stick that little edge in there. Okay, we just have to be careful when we're stitching this. There we go. I stuffed it in with my end of my scissor. We want to be careful when we're stitching this that it doesn't, we don't want it to pop open on us. Okay? So I think that I'll go in and just put a little stitching right there. Because normally, like I said, I'd hand stitch it, but I don't have anything hand stitching here. So let's see if I can get that just stitched in a little bit. So I'm holding it down, and I'm not going to bring my presser foot down because it'll pinch my finger. But I just put my needle into that little area to hold that whole business down. And I'm just going to take a couple stitches right there. Let me see if it doesn't want to, it's so much there it doesn't want to go forward. So let me just lift up. And I'm just going to do my lock in place. And let's see how that worked out. Okay, so now it's gonna hold that right in place. Okay, and I got a million threads there, but that's okay. I'm gonna come do the other side. So I've pinched onto it. If I hold it down, see how my finger is a little ways away? So if I hold that down here, I'm going to, with my hand wheel, bring that needle down, and that needle now is holding all of that down. And I'm just going to do a couple stitches. And again, it's giving me a hard time today, and I'm sure this will happen to you. So I just lifted my foot and my needle and moved it forward a little bit. I just want to have a few stitches there to hold it in place. Okay, so now it's holding it down. And I've got all those 8 million pins that I didn't put away. Okay, so here we go. I'm just trimming off some of those threads I just made. So remember, we're doing the little stitch in the ditch. Oh, need to be on my fabric. Oh, well, that would help if I had I couldn't figure out how come I couldn't get my fabric in there. My needle was down. Okay. So I'm on my fabric, and again, I think I've pushed my back out, so I want to make sure I push that back in. And see, if I was doing this by hand, I'd be all done by now. Lock in place. And I'm just going to take my time. I'll take my glasses off, I can't see. And remember, we're doing the stitch in the ditch. And we'll hope for most of the binding in the back catching. Let's not get carried away and think it's going to be 100% right. Let's hope most of it is. Then if it's 100%, won't we be excited? And I'm going to turn around and come back a little bit, hopefully. I'm trying to see if I fell off the front. No, I'm good. And then I'm going to lock it. And let's see how we did. Okay, so we got, I got threads everywhere. I'm going to trim up some of these threads out of my way. So I missed a little area right here. So I'm just going to pull it in a little bit. Now, you can, stitch from this side and make sure that you catch it all, but I'm not sure where it'll be here. Now in this case, this piece is coming over. So it's more important for this side to be nicer in this section than it is. So my point being is if I come back here and I stitch along the back of this in the proper place, oops, sorry, get too much stuff in my way again. Okay. If I flip over to this side and I stitch along the edge and catch it all, especially right through here, if I should stitch down further or up further from being in the ditch, it really isn't important because I'm folding this over. This is the part that's going to be seen, so this would be the more important side to get right. Does that make sense? So what I want to do is I'm going to stitch from this side, which is the folded side. I'm going to stitch from this side the whole way so that I know that I get it nice and neat, and then then maybe I can show you the difference. So I just want to fix the little areas that I missed. And I got 80 million threads again. I guess that was just a wayward thread. And what I'm going to do is, you see right there, I got this lip. I'm going to undo that because I'm going to do that neater. And I'm undoing it because I want you to see how you can undo something and make it better, and it's okay. You don't have to be upset about undoing something. So I'm good until about right here. So how long did that take to undo? A second? And I'm going to clip this again, except I'm going to be sewing from this side so my clips are out. And I'm gonna start sewing. Let's see, where did we go wrong? Right about here. So I'm gonna start sewing a little bit on top of where I was, and then I'm gonna continue sewing around. I'm gonna go right over this little bit that's okay, and I'm gonna come down right to the end. But this time I'm doing it from the opposite side. Before we were on this side stitching in the ditch on here because if this wasn't perfect, it wouldn't matter. We want it to look nice here. In this instance, because we're folding over, this needs to look nice. Now, for me, I would stitch from here up to about here with the stitching in the ditch on this side because it shows. And I would just come up a little ways and stop, and then I would turn my work over and I would stitch the rest of the way from the other side because this is going to show. I will take the time to do that because it's not that big a deal. Right, Rose? It's not that big a deal. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and start a little bit of where it was good. Continue on. I'm going to go right to the end. Okay? So let's go sew. So I'm going to have to reach past the camera. I'm going to start and put my needle in right on where my previous stitching that is good was. And I'm going to go ahead and lock it. Okay? I'm not going to get overly concerned with the other side and if it's perfect because it's not going to be showing. And I'm going to make sure that I'm stitching along the edge of the binding. I sew with my nose, I call it. I have my face practically in my needle. And so it's a little, I can't get my nose down as close as I'd like to. Oh, I went way off course there. That's okay. I'm going to come back up. Because you know me, I don't like those threads on the end. Okay. Oh. Back to the work table. We're almost done. We just need a snap. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and trim out some of these. I feel like I got 40 million threads here. I forgot to come to this side to take out the stitches I didn't need. So the thread was still there. So what happened was, let's see if you can see it. So you see how I got my waves of stitching for my quilting? So I really can't tell. I can't tell if this is a wave from my stitching or if it's my, wait a minute, or if it's my stitching from the back. Hold on. No. So this little wave of stitching, let's see if you can see it. There it is. This little section of stitching is actually, I do believe, oh no, oh yeah, no, wait a minute. I want to tell you the truth now. Hold on. I don't want to lie. Yes, it is the stitching here. And the reason mine is probably off that far is, remember I told you in some places I took too narrow of a seam? So that's what that would have been. But do you see how it really doesn't matter? Well, it doesn't matter to me. because number one, this is going to be closed. All I care about is this looking nice. This looks nice. This looks nice. This looks nice. You really can't tell that that's not part of my quilting. And it's just that one spot. The rest of it is right in the ditch. See it right there? So it's just that one spot, and I'm still not certain if that's not my, see my wave quilting here? I'm still not sure if that is or not. I poked it through, but I think that's my stitching from my binding. But everything else looks fine. And you wouldn't pay any attention to that. But that's a perfect example of why I do mine by hand, because I'm not really good at this. But I'm happy with that. My little scissors fit in. I got more than enough room for those scissors to fit in. And this, I'm going to put a snap on, and that's going to snap closed. And it's going to be for my bucket. Now I got to put my, let me back up a little bit. Oh, wrong way, sorry. I got to put my scissors in this way, I hate to say. I think that, well, no, they'll be all right. I think they're kind of top heavy. But there's my little bucket. So if I was given this as a gift, I'd give them a smaller pair of scissors, and I'd probably make the needle keep about this size. Because for if you're doing some hand work or even hand sewing, you don't need this size. You don't need these scissors this big. So you could easily cut this down to, smaller size. You just remember, you want to make sure you have flap enough. So if you got rid of this whole part of the scissor keep, you know what I'm saying? You'd be perfect. Oh, thanks, Cindy. So let me put my snaps on, because I can hopefully do that without any problems. So I got my stabber tool and my snap setter thing. I can't remember, but I think I might have put this, if you go to my webpage, therightspot.com, there's a page of all different tools that I use, links for them. I think that's it. They also have that, you remember the purple one? Speaking of Boone's Farm and Ripple, do you remember and they still make it, it's a purple kind of oval shape, and it's a snap setter. I think it might come with a little hammer. That'll work too. Ooh, so let's see. That'll work. So I need a, oh, look how that, well, that was good. I need an innie and an outie, and then 2 covers. The covers are the ones with the prong on them. Oh, tissue box cover someday. Christine, you'll have to remind me of that. Do you want a little travel tissue box or a regular size tissue box cover? And the only reason I asked that is because I think it was Lynn was telling me that tissues don't come, I call them portable tissues. They don't, you know how they came in the pack and it's slit in the middle and they came out the top of the middle? They don't come out that way anymore. They come out one of the ends. So I'll work on that. Oh, okay. So I want to flip this over, but thanks for that. That's a good idea. I'm going to flip this over, and I want to make sure that when I make a hole, I've left enough room all the way around, away from my binding for my snap. Well, I can come back in closer now. Oh, that's a little too close. How's that? I can reach there. Okay, so I want to make sure that my snap cover isn't in the way of my binding. But I have to make sure that it's not in the way of this binding. So I just have to look and go, oh, that looks like a good spot. So I kind of make a little I made a little indent, and I stick this tool in. I lost my cap. And what I do is I put this down. Now you see I'm holding it with one finger. You see that? Okay, regular size tissue, long or tall. You know what I mean? They come tall and square or long and rectangle. Okay, so I put this in, and what I do is I pull the fabric up. Because I pull the fabric up, I'm not jabbing in and out the other side of this. Okay? Then, while I'm there, I've got this one done. Now I want to fold this again. And you can't really do it with the scissors in it, so don't try that because they're in the way. So I've got my flap folded down like I want it. I've done this. Now I want to make sure I look and then I'm past the binding to put my other cap. And what I do is, and I can't do that this way, is I'm just pulling the fabric up onto the stabber. I don't know what else to call it. I'm pulling the fabric up so that I don't go through over here. So I came in here and pulled the fabric up as I held onto this. Does that make sense? They make the, what is it, crocodile? But they have tools that you can, squeeze and it makes the hole. But I do it that way. So then, in this case, I want the innie, personal preference. I want the innie here because I don't want the outie sticking out here. And my good part, the pretty part, I guess you'd call it, actually has to go on the inside because you've got to snap it shut this way. So I've poked my cap through, putting my outie on. And let's see if I can do this so you can see. My goal is to get the cap, goes in this black part, and settles in there. And then the white will go over my outie. So I've got a hold of it. I just want to make sure that I've got my cap in the black section. And I just have to squeeze. Okay, and it's done. So now we got to do the other one. Now this time, the pretty part goes on the pretty side. Whoops, sorry, did it again. So I squeezed it through. And I'm going to put my outie on. Black cap for the black section for the cap, flat cap size. So I want to make sure, I can feel that I've got that cap in the black section, and then just squeeze, and we're done. Oh, let me go back here. There we go. So there we are. Oh. So scissors in, and this scissor, look how much room I've got. Here's where my scissor ends, so I'm going to bring it down a little bit. But see, there's the point of my scissor. There's the top of my scissor. I really don't have to worry about it jamming down in here. But if I did want to make it a little smaller, where am I? Right there. I could take off about an inch. But that works for me. I'm good with that. So there we are with our little basket. With our little, and see, if you had littler scissors, they'd be like half the size. Oh, look. Oh, look at that. Let me zoom back a little more here. Zoom back, zoom back. There we go. If we made this a little smaller, look, they fit right in the basket. Oop, That would be down. They'd fit right in the basket. So smaller pair of scissors. Lynn, oh yeah, you want some snaps? I'm telling you, I started out with that purple. I'm sure it's at Joann's and Walmart. It's purple. It almost looks like, what do they call it? An orange peel shape. You know, it's what is it? It's oval, but kind of comes to a point on each end. And there's 3 parts to it. And then you put your little snap, goes in. It has a little indent, just like this. Oh, but Lynn, it's Valentine's Day. Skip the flowers. Go for the snap setter. What do you think, ladies, gents? Skip the flowers and candy. Go for the snap setter. I got mine as a set that it came with. Oh, you know what? I can't live long enough to use these snaps, all these snaps. But it's a good array of color, and I want to think that I might have got there's longer snaps, you know, to go through thicker. Though these look like regular ones. But I think I got it I think it was a set. Not positive, but I think this came as a set. And I think I keep saying I think. I believe I put a link for it. If I didn't, just let me know somewhere in the comments somewhere, and I'll get it for you. But look at there. Here we go. So even though I had a little struggle on my ends, they're good. Did everyone see Rose's comment? Oh, that was really funny. Skip the flowers, keep the candy, and still get the snap setter. There you go, Lynn. It's right there in black and white. Okay, so that's our project for today. You can go back to the beginning and look how I talked about. Oh, see, I'm off a little bit. I should have been here. Now that I look at it. So I'm centered to this, but I'm not centered to here. So I think I should have been over this way, because you can barely see it. But I think I should have been there. You see what I'm saying? I centered to this curve, but I didn't center to this long section. See how I'm way over there and I should be here? But anyways, it all worked out. So I forgot what so if you go back to the beginning in where we talked about making different sizes. Excuse me. So thanks everyone for joining in. Let me check. I think we're at 1 o'clock next week. What is it still February? Yes. 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time next week. What are we doing? We may be doing the a pillowcase, because the method for the pillowcase we're going to use for a bag. Or that'll get you wondering, won't it? So I think next week is a pillowcase, because it's the same method of sewing as we're going to do a bag. I got thinking about it, and we can do a bag the exact same way. So we end up with 3 seams, even though we have 2 different colors. Okay, so thanks again for everybody for joining in and getting through that little wrestling with those ends. That was the first time I really had any issue, so you should be fine. However you need to get it to just hide that other fabric. Remember, it's not your prom dress. It's just a scissor keep. It'll be fine, whatever it is. And then each one you do will be better than the one before. So have a great rest of your weekend. And I'll see you either next Saturday at 1, or if you join me on Thursday night at 7 p.m. So thanks a lot, everyone, for joining in. Be sure to hit the like and the bell and the thumbs up and all those good things. I appreciate it. Thanks again.